Welcome to Module 4 of Phase 2 of Pen to Profit. Today, we're gonna do something that 99% of the copywriters out there never do, and it's gonna set yourself apart from all of them just by doing this very simple and useful exercise that we're gonna go through right in a minute. And this exercise is uncovering the multiple levels of problems you can find from one initial problem, and from that, understand what's the real desire that your audience has. Because whenever you ask your audience what's their desire, they're gonna tell you a bullshit answer. In the weight loss niche, they're gonna tell that their desire is to lose weight, or even if they're more specific, as we were being before, it's gonna be lose 3 kilos of belly fat. Now, that's the very shallow level of desire that they believe they want, but it's not actually what they want. And I'm gonna show you why. Now, in order for us to uncover their real desire, we need to first uncover the 3 levels of problems, what I call the external problem, the internal problem, and the philosophical problem. And once we uncover those, then we can finally uncover the real desire of your audience, and that's what we're gonna do now. So let's roll into it. So in order for us to get started with this exercise, we need to have your audience's external problem. We are gonna derive everything from this external problem, and from there is that we're gonna really figure out what's their real desire. Now, in order for you to have your external problem, you have to have done the exercises from last module. So if you haven't done them yet, do them now before you get into this module. And then once you do it, and once you have ChatGPT coming up with a list of around 10 different real problems, real frustrations your audience faces on the day-to-day lives, then you can get started with this exercise. Cool? So for example, for me here, we have gone through this exercise, and the fears and frustrations ChatGPT came up with at the end. The list was 1, fear of judgment, health fears, fear of rejection, frustration with clothing, frustration with weight loss attempts, fear of missing out, frustration with social expectations, fear of not being taken seriously, frustration with physical limitations, and fear of future weight gain. The one I'm gonna pick for this exercise, and you have to pick one. You can do with multiple of them, but you have to do one by one. I'm gonna pick one to use on this exercise to illustrate a point here, and the best external problems for you to pick here are the ones that people experience very often on their day-to-day lives. So those are the most pressing pain points they have, their most constant frustrations that they always get reminded about. And if you lead your communication with that, those are the ones that are gonna get them to remind of you every single time they experience that same frustration, that same problem. So those are the good ones to have. In my example, I'm gonna take the one where we talk about group photos. Every single time this person takes a photo, it's not necessarily only group photos, just taking photos in general. Every single time this person takes a photo, the first thing she notices is that she looks overweight. Whenever you take a photo, if you have a big insecurity towards one specific part of your body, let's say you have a big nose, let's say you don't like your teeth, let's say you don't like your hairline, you think your hairline is receding, whatever it is, whatever that big insecurity that you have, that big self-conscious part of your body that you have, when you take a picture, that's the first thing you're gonna notice. So if someone is overweight, that's probably gonna be the first thing they notice when they take a picture, is that they are looking a little bit overweight. So whenever they take a picture, they're gonna get reminded of this problem multiple times a day or multiple times a week, and every single time they do, they'll get reminded of you. So that's the one I'm picking for my specific scenario. For your specific scenario, I want you to figure out what's the one that happens the most often and is also the most impactful for your specific situation, for your specific target customer. And then you pick that one, and from there, we're gonna derive the internal problem. So basically, the external problem is the problem that people that see from the outside would see and say, that's the problem. She's overweight. Whenever she takes pictures, she looks overweight. That's a problem that everyone else sees. That's the external problem, is the problem that they experience in their day-to-day lives. Now, the second problem that's derived from that is the internal problem. And the internal problem means how the external problem makes that person feels inside, internally. How do they feel about the external problem? So every single time they take a picture, they look overweight. How does that make them feel internally? Now, instead of trying to come up with this answer on my own, again, I jump into my computer here and I ask ChatGPT to come up with answers for me, and that's what I wanted to do right now as well, and let's do it together. So basically, here's the prompt that I used. And by the way, this is on the exact same conversation that we had before So whenever you're having those conversations, it's always good to keep everything under the same chat because ChatGPT learns as you're giving it prompts. So every single time you run through a new iteration, it learns more and uses the past prompts to also come up with a better output this time. So it's kind of like learning on top of each interaction that you run through here. So that's why you should keep using the same specific chat. And by the way, I forgot to mention that before, but I highly recommend that you use ChatGPT 4 here. Whenever you create a new chat, if you come here to new chat, you have the option here to use GTP 3.5 or GTP 4. In order for you to use GTP 4, you need to pay for ChatGPT. It's $20 a month. It's gonna be the best investment of your copywriting career. I highly, highly recommend that you do so because the results you get from here are way, way better than ChatGPT 3.5. So whenever you're performing those very resource-consuming tasks, I recommend you use it here. They even said here that ChatGPT 4 is our most capable model, great for tasks that require creativity and advanced reasoning. We definitely require advanced reasoning here, so that's the one to use for this. And you know you're using ChatGPT 4 when the little icon that shows up here is purple. The other one for ChatGPT 3.5 is green, so that's when you know you're using one or the other. So let's take a look at the prompt that I use here. One of the main frustrations of this woman is when she takes pictures with friends and realizes that she's looking overweight and standing out in a negative way, in a negative fashion. While all their friends are somewhat in shape, she's the only one that doesn't share the same attribute. First thing I'm saying here is I'm describing the situation for my specific external problem is she's taking pictures of her friends and she's looking overweight. She's standing out in a negative fashion. I'm describing, again, the context to ChatGPT because whenever I'm talking to artificial intelligence, I need to give it full context. That's the problem I'm taking, and that's the one I'm giving full context about. The fact that she's looking overweight on pictures with her friends is what's called an external problem. That is, the problem that people from the outside see that she's suffering from. Again, I'm explaining here to ChatGPT what is an external problem, just like I did to you. I'm teaching a concept to ChatGPT and it's gonna learn and it's gonna use this concept the way I teach it. So the fact that she's looking overweight on pictures with her friend, it's what's called an external problem. That is the problem that people from the outside see that she's suffering from. However, every single external problem causes an internal problem. This internal problem is how the person feels about the external problem. In this case, how this woman feels about looking overweight on pictures with her friends. So this is the full context, and now I'm gonna give it the task that I wanted to perform. So describe to the best of your abilities what is this woman's internal problem, the emotional reaction that the external problem causes on her internally. Describe it in detail, breaking down her feelings and how that affects her day-to-day life. So again, I'm being very specific here with the type of output that I'm expecting. I want it to be very detailed, I want it to break down the feelings, and I want it to break down how it affects her day-to-day life. Because I don't really know that, I'm trying to figure it out, but I need to get the full picture. Just like I'm giving ChatGPT the full picture here, I'm asking it to give me the full picture as well from its perspective. So we have a complete conversation here where our realities almost match because we are seeing the world from the same lenses, right? That's the importance of giving the full context and also asking it to give you the full context. So this is the answer I got. This woman's internal problem as a result of seeing herself as the overweight one in pictures with friends is multifaceted, bringing up a complex mix of emotions, thoughts, and behaviors that affect her daily life. The first one is insecurity and self-consciousness. Every time she sees a photo where she perceives herself as standing out negatively due to her weight, she experiences a painful pain of self-consciousness. This is not just a passing feeling. And this is the interesting part. Pay attention to this. This is not just a passing feeling. It permeates her thoughts, affecting her ability to enjoy the moment. She might become overly focused on how she looks in photos, perhaps even avoiding them when possible. This insecurity can cast a shadow over social gatherings, making her hyper aware of her appearance instead of enjoying her time with friends. This is very, very good info. This is exactly what you need for your internal problem. This is exactly what you need. It's the best info you could get, and when you use that in your communication, when you use that to communicate your message, that's when you're communicating through an emotional level. When you communicate through your external problem, you're communicating at a rational level. Now, when you're communicating using the internal problem, you are communicating to an emotional level. So let's keep reading this. Shame and embarrassment. Coupled with insecurity is a deep sense of shame. She might believe that she's letting herself and others down by not lifting into societal norms of body size. These feelings of shame can extend beyond the moments of photo taking or viewing, affecting how she carries herself in her daily life and her willingness to participate in certain activities. And this is very good because it's telling us that it gets so bad to a point where she might as well start avoiding social situations just to avoid taking pictures in the first place. And that we're gonna use on the next level for a problem, but we're not there yet, so let's just keep reading here. Seeing herself as the only overweight one in photos with her friends could also lead to feelings of frustrations and hopelessness. Despite the past attempts to lose weight, she's confronted with visual proof that she hasn't reached her goals, which can be incredibly disheartening. This might make her question the feasibility of her weight loss goals, dampening her motivation to continue trying. Imagine you lead your ads with this angle. So for example, have you ever questioned the feasibility of her weight loss goals as if you don't have the motivation anymore to keep trying it? And then you just lead with this communication and you say that because every single time I take a picture, that's visual proof that you haven't achieved your goal yet. And every single time you see that, it's incredibly disheartening and it hurts your motivation to continue trying. Have you ever experienced that? When you're doing that, you're talking at an emotional level, and not only that, you're also bringing up and addressing problems that people never addressed before. So she's like, oh yeah, I definitely experienced that. And that's how you hook people. You just need to hook them in with this emotional communication, and then you use that to pivot to your advantage, to the message they want to convey here. And that's how you get your arguments across that self-sealing bubble, that self-sealing logic that just repels all the arguments that they don't believe to be true. Leading with experiences that they have experienced before, that's how you get your message through that bubble and reach your prospect exactly where they are. That's how we do it. So here you can see we have a few waters: lonely, isolation, low self-esteem, fear and anxiety. The combination of these feelings can significantly impact her self-esteem. She might start defining her worth by her weight, seeing herself as less valuable or less attractive than her friends. This negative self-view can affect various aspects of her life, including her work performance, her willingness to pursue new opportunities, and her relationships. This, in and of itself, it's exactly what we need. This is an entire ad, an entire even sales argument is here. Remember when I told you that you have to understand your prospects better than they understand themselves? That's exactly it. Because then you can use this to your advantage in the communication and say, for example, ask a question. Have you ever felt that you were defining your worth based on your weight and seeing yourself as less valuable or less attractive just because you're a little bit overweight? But you're going to say, yes, I have felt before that I have defined my worth based on my weight. And then I can say, the problem with that is that this negative self-view can affect various aspects of your life, including your work performance. How's your work performance right now? Are you performing well to the level that you know you can perform, or are you slacking off a little bit? What do you think? What's your work performance right now? And if they go, yeah, my work performance is not the best right now, and they probably will, because if they're experiencing this, they're probably experience this other symptom as well. They're gonna go, oh my gosh, yeah, now it clicks. It's that little epiphany moment that it calls on them. Yes, I'm not performing well on my work right now because of my weight. And the reason because I'm not performing well is because due to the fact that I'm overweight, I am seeing myself as less worth, and then I'm not doing my best on my work. So now you were the first one to connect those two problems together and say that the cause of those symptoms, those are not actually the problems. The cause of those symptoms is another underlying problem, which is your weight. So the reason you're not performing work is because of your weight. And when you can have this read, you can give them this code read, they're gonna be like, oh my gosh, this guy really understands me. I have never thought about that before. I feel like this guy understands me better than I understand myself. So he must know what he's talking about, and he must have a solution to what I have to my problem. And that's when you create what I call the visceral desire, is when you can have those reads on people. And the way you do it is by communicating at an emotional level, by leading with an internal problem. And then we're gonna pivot that to a solution, and also to the other level of problems we have in here. Let's just first read the last one here. As a result of these experiences, she might live in fear of the next moment where she'll be confronted with her weight. This can breed an undercurrent of anxiety in her day-to-day life, impacting her overall mental well-being. And then this is very interesting as well. This emotional burden isn't limited to the moments when she's looking at photos. It lingers, affecting her thoughts, feelings, and actions in various areas of her life. It is important to recognize, however, that this internal problem isn't a reflection of her objective worth or potential. The way forward involves addressing these emotional responses and working towards a healthier body image and self-concept alongside any physical health goal she may have. I didn't even ask for this, but it's giving me already a solution. I can say that to her. The emotional burden isn't limited. I know that the emotional burden isn't limited to the moments you're looking at your pictures. I know that permeates through all your day-to-day life, and that affects actions and different decisions you take in different areas of your life. However, it is important that you realize that your weight, this problem, this internal problem, isn't a reflection of your worth or your potential. If you think so, you're wrong, and that's why you're failing in these other areas of your life. So I'm already leading to a solution here just by using this specific communication. It gave me everything I need here, and that's how you really start to get powerful with your communication. And then we have a third layer here. This is the second layer of problems. The first one is the external. The second one is the internal. The third one is the philosophical problem. The philosophical problem is also called a conflict. In movies, they use that a lot, actually, is the conflict that the character faces through all the journey that he's going through. The philosophical problem is the conflict that the internal problem creates inside this prospect, right? So the internal problem is the response that they get internally, the emotion they get internally from the external problem. Now, the philosophical problem is the conflict that they get internally based on the internal problem. The internal problem is the feelings, the emotions. The philosophical problem is the conflict. And the conflict is right here. So as a result of the internal problem, she might live in fear of the next photo, the next social gathering, the next moment where she'll be confronted with her weight. And as we saw above here, I think it's this one here, she might become overly focused on how she looks in photos, perhaps even avoiding them when possible. This insecurity can cast a shadow over social gatherings, making her hyper aware of her appearance instead of enjoying times with her friends. So the philosophical problem in this case is that it can get so bad. The internal problem can get so anxious about taking pictures that she's gonna avoid social gatherings altogether. That's our philosophical problem, is the conflict here. I don't want to go to social gatherings because I know that if I go there, I'm gonna take pictures, and just the thought of me having to take a picture already turned me off because I know I'm gonna look at a picture and I'm gonna get frustrated because I'm gonna look overweight while all my other friends look in shape. That's a very big conflict. And when you can use your communication to lead with the internal problem, communicate an emotional level, use the internal problem to pivot in your advantage, and then you make them aware of the philosophical problem. Remember what I told you first? The most important thing we do as a copywriter is we take the underlying problem that they are not aware of and we make them aware of it. So that's what we're doing here. We lead with the internal problem that they already experienced, that they know the experience, and we're gonna make them aware of the philosophical problem. And once they are aware of that, they cannot unsee it. It's the little things, there's a few things in life so that when you see it, you cannot unsee it. That's one of them. When you see this problem, you cannot unsee it. So now we cannot live with it anymore because you're seeing it. You're not just not living with it. Now you're going to abominate it because you are seeing it there every single time. And every single time they get reminded of this problem, they also get reminded of you because you were the one that made them aware of this problem. And that's how powerful this is. And the real beauty of this is that majority of the copywriters, they have this concept that, oh, I'm going to, at 37 minutes of the sales video, I'm going to say something that's going to convince them. So they're going to have an objection as why they don't want to buy. I'm going to say, oh, because of this, this, and that, that's the reason you should buy now. And the person is going to go like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's the reason I should go buy now. And that's completely false. That's the biggest bullshit there is. That never happens. What happens is you make them aware of their problems. And through these problems, once you create a conflict, once you make them aware of this philosophical problem that creates a conflict inside of them, they are going to have to solve this conflict. Because we don't like to leave conflicts unsolved. And when you create conflict, you create movement. So now she's going to create a story on her own head as to why she can either fix or live with this problem. But if you did a good job here, the copywriter of stabbing people and twisting the knife for them to feel the pain, they're not going to be able to leave this problem. So their only option is to fix it. And when you create these conflicts inside of them, that's the moment they start to creating their own stories inside their head as to why they should buy your product and as to why you are the only person who has the solution that they need. It's very important that you understand that and that you practice that. Now, again, I want you to use that to your specific case, to your specific scenario. I want you to go through this exercise of figuring out first, what is the external problem? What is the internal problem? What is the philosophical problem? And from the philosophical problem, you know what's the conflict. And from this conflict, you know what's their real desire. I'm going to give you another example here. For agents in Navigator, for the online business scenario that we're talking about later, it's pretty much the same thing here. You have access to this course inside here of Educate. The desire that people usually have, the shallow level desire, is to make $10,000 a month. As I said before, that's the number one desire that they say they have, but that's not necessarily their real desire. Again, from that, I can derive the external problem. The external problem these people have is that they're either working a job they don't like, and they want to quit this job, but they don't have the means to do so. They don't have other incomes to replace this job. Or they are in university studying something that they are not passionate about, and they already figure out that this is not the path they want to follow for life. That's not what they want to do for life, but they don't know how to get out of it. They don't have any excuses to quit university because they don't have anything else going on for them. So that's why they want to make $10,000 a month, because in their minds, they see the $10,000 a month mark as the freedom to either quit their job or to quit university, right? And the internal problem that this problem causes is that they feel like they're missing out on life. They feel like they're missing out on very valuable time that they could have been using to something else, and they could have been invested into an online business. They just don't know how. So this creates the philosophical problem. It creates the conflict inside of them. They want to do it. They see it's real. They just don't know how to do it. That's the duality here. That's the conflict that it creates inside of them. And then what they really want, if you really think about it, is not the 10K a month business. What they want is to reclaim the ownership of their lives. They feel like they are not in control of their lives anymore because they are studying something they don't like. They're in university. It's either their parents in control because they are paying for university, or it's their boss that in control of their life because they don't like their job, but they cannot fire their boss because he's the one that pays them. So they don't have the keys to their own lives. They cannot control. They are not in the steering wheel of their own life. That's how they feel. What Agents Navigator is? Agents Navigator is the vehicle that's going to allow you to reclaim the ownership of your life. That's how I sell it. And that's how you communicate to their real desire. And after you go through the problems, before communicating that, of course, you have to go through the problems. You lead with the internal problem. You create the conflict and make them aware of the philosophical problem. And with that, you provide them with the solution to their real desire. And that's when you create that visceral desire that puts yourself as the only viable solution and makes them go, oh my gosh, this guy understands me better than everyone else, including myself. So he must be the only one that has the solution that I need. And that's how you do it. It's the external, the internal, and the philosophical problem. You now have the keys to do that yourself. You now have this knowledge, which is one of the most valuable knowledges when it comes to online marketing, when it comes to copywriting, there is. You now have a really deep understanding of how people think, how people take decisions, and how you can get them to take the decisions you want them to take, and how you can influence them to do that, and how you can communicate on an emotional level. And then after communicating and hooking them to an emotional level and getting them sold on the emotional level, you can provide them with the logical arguments, as we have seen here, as to why your solution is the best solution. And if that's the case, you have the logical arguments that they can use to justify themselves and create the stories in their heads as to why they should buy your product. Now, I'm gonna give you another way of finding out a little bit more about your problems so you can get to these problems in the first place. And then after that, on the next phase, we're gonna see how we can use all this raw data, all this information we uncover here, and turn that into very high converting copy. Cool? So, I hope you enjoyed this. Can't wait to see you on the next module, and yeah, let's do this.